If you look halfway down the building, you'll see the four major infrastructures carved in the stone. On the left, you will see the linen mills, and then you see the Ulster weavers, and then you will see the shipbuilding, and then you will see the rope makers. So that was the four major infrastructures in the city back in the early construction back in 1898, and the building was complete in 1906. So it took 8 years to construct. The building now sits on the site of the old White Linen Hall, and the building itself is made out of a beautiful white Portland stone, which was imported. It's predominantly limestone. Replica of the staircase that was inside the Titanic. Just not as much water in there, folks. If you look over the right, you will see Queen Victoria in behind the front gates. So we're now going to head down Chichester Street, which is named after Lord Chichester. He was an administrator, he was a soldier, and he was a deputy lord to the whole of Ireland back in the 15th century. If you look at the next street coming up your left and look to your left, you will see a very ornate backlit building. It is now a nightclub called Revolution de Cuba. Because of all the influx of cash back in the early 1900s, due to all the infrastructure, all these ornate banks started dotting up all around the city centre, as there was no such thing. So as we turn left into Victoria Street, if you look to your left at the entrance to Victoria Square, you will see a lovely yellow water fountain. That is the Daniel Joseph Jaffa Memorial, and Joseph Jaffa was the first Jewish Lord Mayor in Belfast. After the fountain, you will see Bittles Bar. That is the thinnest bar in Belfast, and that is also where you'll find the best pint of Guinness. On the right, you'll see one of our many police stations, and as you can see, because of the troubles, they're all very heavily fortified. So folks, if you look directly to your front, you will see Belfast's answer to the Leaning Tower of Pisa. That is the Albert Memorial Clock. You can see it tilts to the right and also leans towards us. The reason behind that, the clock was built over a river called the River Farson, which they eventually diverted the clock, waiting on the sailors to arrive, and that is why the clock leans over. But I've renamed this clock after my mother. You call my mother Eileen. So folks, whenever we do turn right, coming up on your right will be your original McHugh's. And coming up on your right. And on the left you will see the Custom House Square and the Custom House. This was seen as an ideal location, just simply right beside the docks. So folks, if you look directly to your front, on the edge of the river, you will see the Big Fish. The Big Fish is built in a mosaic style. It has 200 tiles. Is Belfasta, and Belfasta means the mouth of the river. So that's where Belfast derives its name from. If you look to your left, you will see the mouth of the river. That is Belfast Lough, and it leads out into the Irish Sea. On the right, as we cross over the Queen's Bridge, we have the largest river in Belfast. That is the River Lagan. So we're now heading over the Queen's Bridge, and we're going to turn left into Queen's Island. Queen's Island is home to the Belfast Millennium Project, the Odyssey Arena. It has an indoor ice skating rink, and it's home to the Belfast Giants, our local ice hockey team. It also has many bars, restaurants and clubs, like the Belfast Bombers. I'm sure you can imagine how that one would have been down, folks. About as quick as the Titanic. Now if you look to your left, you will see a pirate ship that's just come in today. And if you do wonder why we call the hockey team the Belfast Giants, if you look to your left shortly, you will see one of the game hockey pucks. This was knocked out of the ring just last week. So folks, if you look directly to your front, in the distance on the hill, you will see our Parliament buildings. That is Stormont. Stormont was constructed back in 1932. As you can see, it was built in the same stone as our City Hall, a white Portland stone. In front of the buildings it has 6 pillars, 1 pillar for each of the counties in the water temperature at the time the Titanic sank. Water temperature at time of sinking was minus 2.2 degrees Celsius, so that's what attributed to a lot of the deaths. Coming up on your left, you will see the SS Nomadic. She is the last sister ship of the White Star Line, and she was purpose-built to ferry passengers and mail to and from the Titanic in Cherbourg in France because of the shallow waters. It's now a visitor attraction centre, and you can pay to go on the vessel and have a look around. Next after that, the large building in the shape of a star, that is your Titanic Experience Museum. In there you can learn all about the Titanic, from its design and its drawing, through the conception of the build, up until the fatal sinking of the vessel. Then after that we have this red brick building, which is now the Titanic Hotel. This was once the drawing offices of the shipyard. It was in this building where Thomas Andrews drew and designed the famous ship. It's now a 4-star boutique hotel. And as we're looking over to your left, you will see these large metal poles. These metal poles line the slipway where the Titanic and our sister ship, the Olympic, were launched from after completion. Next after that, we have a large great building, the Titanic Studios. This was once the paint hall of the shipyards. It's now a movie studio and it's owned by HBO. And I was inside this building where they filmed most of the interior shots of the Game of Thrones. And if you look through the gaps, you'll see some of the interior sets and also the blue screens that they use for the backdrops and the CGI. Come the largest cranes in the world, and they're named after biblical characters, Samson and Goliath. The smaller one, Samson, was built back in 1969. The larger one, Goliath, was built back in 1972. So they weren't around at the time of the building of the Titanic. They're still in operation to this day, and they're now listed as iconic landmarks of Belfast. So they will remain because of the shallow waters in Cherbourg in France. So Belfast has a population of around 350,000 people. The Greater Belfast area has a population of around 670,000 people. So it is an up-and-coming city. Coming up on your right, you will see the O2 Arena, and prior to its construction back in the year 2000, there was nowhere for any major artists to come and perform at an indoor arena in this city. So this was a purpose-built arena. It's now an 11,000 all-seater. And it's also home to the Belfast Giants, our local ice hockey team. He said, I've spent a lot of money on booze, birds and fast cars, and the rest I simply just squandered. East Belfast is also home to a famous singer, Van the Man Morrison. He lived 2 miles to your left in a street called Cypress Avenue, and he sang about that street in one of his songs. Thinking of Kippers. That is the Beacon of Hope. She was erected to symbolise peace, but she's gained a few nicknames over the years. One being Lula with the Hula, the Thing with the Ring, or my most favourite, the Doll on the Ball. Thankfully, it never happened. Off to the left-hand side, you will see the High Court. The High Court was built back in 1933. The wall you can see to the front is a more recent addition. It was built after one of the darkest days in Northern Ireland history, called Bloody Friday. That is where 26 bombs were placed all around the city centre, and they all detonated within about 80 minutes apart. This street would have been heavily targeted because of the courthouses on the right, but also on the left used to be the main bus depot, which is no longer there. It was targeted also. 9 people lost their lives that day, and over 130 people were injured. We're in the market. As I said, predominantly fresh fish, but it won't open the stores until 8 AM on Friday morning, as it is only a weekend market. As we approach the traffic lights, if you look across the road to your left, you will see the British Telecom building. You will notice all the ground floor windows are breeze blocked up. This is a typical example of a government building that was built in the 80s and the early 90s to withstand minimal impact in case of a roadside bomb. Coming up on your right shortly, you will see a small blue circular coupe in the Republic of Ireland, mostly of Euro denomination. Everyone knows who done it, folks. It was proven it was a problem. I'll give you all a hint. It was a 3-letter organisation, and I think there might have been an A and an I in there somewhere. One of the UK's largest ever heists. So Belfast has 3 5-star hotels. We're going to see one very shortly once we turn into Bedford Street. This one will be the Grand Central. We also have the Fitzwilliam, you can see to your front, with an F on top of the building. And the third 5-star hotel we have is in the Cathedral Quarter. It's called the Merchant. But folks, there's no excuse for staying in the Premier Inn. Even how much Lenny Henry says that those mattresses are soft. On the right, you'll see the Grand Central, and in the Grand Central, you can purchase the most expensive pint of Guinness in Belfast up on the rooftop bar. Coming up on your left, you will see the Ulster Hall. It is a Victorian events hall, and it was inside this building where Led Zeppelin first performed Stairway to Heaven. It's also hosted the likes of the Rolling Stones and AC/DC, but more recently it's been used for political events and also some boxing matches. As we approach the lights, if you look to your left, you will see the headquarters of the BBC in Northern Ireland. So folks, if you look directly to your front, in the island across the road, you'll see this red sandstone coloured water fountain. If anyone is here for a few days and you like Italian food, on your right at the traffic lights you will see Villa Italia. It's one of the nicest Italian restaurants that we do have within the city. Doors back in 1849. It now hosts over 300 courses to students. Its grounds are open to the public, and within its grounds are the Ulster Museum and also the Botanical Gardens. The Botanical Gardens are well worth a visit while you're here. They do host an indoor palm tree house. And that is also where you'll find Harry Potter. So coming up your left, folks, we have stop number 10. If anyone wants to visit the Ulster City Belfast building, it was in this building where a famous doctor by the name of Sir Frank Partridge invented what is known today as the mobile defibrillator. He invented it back in 1965, so Belfast has been saving lives for over 60 years. So in Belfast we invented the modern day car, the mobile defibrillator, and also the Titanic. I suppose 2 out of 3 isn't bad. If you look over your left, folks, you see a large yellow tower block. That's one of our major hospitals in Belfast. That one is called the City. Coming up on your right, you will see a construction site. Up to 50 pence from his mouth and it landed in the cigarette box. You had to give him £5. That's where he got the money for his next drink. Or he will have hustled you for a game of pool. And as you can see, just above him there, folks, people did know him as the People's Champion. So if you look into the next street coming up on your left and look over your left shoulder, you will see a mural for George Best, the footballer. George Best died back in 2005 after his struggle with alcohol. Probably one of the best footballers that this world has ever seen. Also coming to the left, you'll see a small war memorial garden. This one is dedicated to the 36th Ulster Division, who fought in the Battle of Somme in the First World War back in 1916. Just coming up your left. As you can see, folks, Sandy Row is quite a deprived area. It is in much need of renovation and restoration. To the Bottle of Wine back in 1690. If anyone's here tonight and you're looking for a nice Indian restaurant, directly to your front you have the New Delhi. It is hell because the windows were always boarded up. And it was in here where Bill and Hillary Clinton stayed when they done a state visit back in 1995. On the right facing that you'll see the most famous pub in Belfast. That is the Crown Liquor Saloon. It is built in a very Spanish ornate style. It's still gaslit to this day on the inside, and inside it is very quaint. It has lovely little snugs and booths. And on the left you will see the Opera House. So whenever the Europa Hotel was bombed, the Opera House was often damaged too. And it was in here where Luciano Pavarotti and also Charlie Chaplin performed. And if anybody's staying in the Europa Hotel, folks, it might be safer to sleep underneath the bed rather than on top of it. And when it started the 30-year conflict, there was one loyalist parade which incited over 3 days of. Folks, whenever we do turn left into Divis Street, we're now about to enter the heartland. All the residents were asked what they would like placed on the roof, and as you can see, they all said a metal curved tin roof. So no helicopter could ever land there again. And just in front of the block of flats as we drive up, you will see a painted wall. If you look to the left, you will see a small mural for Bobby Sands. So folks, if you look over to your right, you will see the start of the Peace Wall. That Peace Wall separates both sides of the community, the Falls Road from the Shangle. Everything on this side, Republican Nationalist. Everything on the far side will be Unionist, Loyalist. As we pass the next street on your right, which is Percy Street, if you look down it, you will see a set of steel gates separating one street on social housing. All the houses on this side of the gates will be Republican Nationalist, Catholic owned. On the far side, Unionist, Loyalist, Protestant owned. The flour mill on your right has 2 entrances, one on this side for its Catholic workers, and one on the far side for its Protestant workers. Republican murals. You'll also see a lot of affiliation to the hunger strikes back in 1981, and you'll also see a lot of solidarity towards Palestine. So the Republican Nationalist people will support Palestine. The Unionist Loyalist people, they will support Israel. The last mural on the right before we turn, you will see 3 staunch Republicans. You will see Kieran Nugent, Billy McKee, and Brendan Darkey Hughes. The guy in the bottom right hand corner, that will be Brendan Darkey Hughes. He would have been the military commander for the IRA in this area, Lower Falls and Divis, D Company IRA. On the right you will see the RNU stands for Palestine back in 1970. Well, if you look to the right shortly, you will see the Republican people thought otherwise, just who these people are. Once we enter this first set of gates, we're now about to leave Republican Nationalist Falls Road. We're going to enter into no man's land, and then we're going to drive through the Loyalist set of gates. That's us onto the Shangle area. On the right, you'll see murals depicting the First and Second World Wars. You'll also see Lord Kitchener. And as we turn left, if you look to the right, just where the sky is, you'll see a large blue mural for the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force. As I said, the Unionists will support Israel, Republicans, Palestine. So folks, we're now going to handrail Belfast's largest peace wall, initially constructed by the British Army back in 1969 on request from the Republican people to protect them from the loyalist people. Initially constructed with corrugated tin, it wasn't strong enough, so they had to build a concrete based structure. And then they put corrugated tin on top of the wall, and then they put a grill section on top of the tin to give it the extra height. So there you have it to your front, folks. That is Belfast's largest peace wall. It's not the only peace wall. There's 34 miles of peace wall all over the city, but this would be the tallest one. This one stands at over 32 feet high. And as we turn right along the wall, if you look to your left, you will see another set of steel gates. These gates will close tonight at 7 p.m. and reopen tomorrow morning at 7 a.m., separating both sides of the community. Everything beyond those gates Republican, everything this side roll now would be Unionist, Loyalist. And it was on the far side of this peace wall to your front where the trouble started in Belfast back in August of 1969. There's a street on the Republican side called Bombay Street, and a local mob from your right hand side, which is your Unionist Loyalist Shannon Road, along with the B Specials and the RUC, who were state police. They colluded together, went into Bombay Street one evening, and they burnt out 38 of the 62 Catholic homes in that one street. So that's what started the troubles in Belfast. But as I said, they initially started up in our maiden city, Londonderry / Derry, and then gradually filtered into Belfast and all other regions of Northern Ireland. So once we get to the end of the street, if you look to your left, you will see the largest crossing of. And then also on the right, you see a blue one for the White Rock Flute Band there, a local loyalist flute band. Straight after that, you'll see one for the Ulster Volunteer Force. This one is for C Company. No, it's not. This one's for 4 Platoon, or the 4 Step, as they know themselves. Then we have a one on the right for the Ulster and the American Connection. It's quite a fresh one. I think it's about 2 weeks old. Now once we get through the lights, if you look over to your left, you will see the Ulster Rangers Supporters Club. So the Unionist Loyalist people will support Glasgow Rangers, whereas the Republican Nationalist people, they will support Glasgow Celtic. Any excuse to fight, folks. Coming up on your left, you'll see a large mural for the Ulster Volunteer Force. This one's for C Company and S Company. You will see that these armed men are all unmasked. The reason behind that, all these men are now deceased. If these men were alive today, they would not blur their faces. Also coming up your left, you'll see a blue shop called the Court Credit Union. This was the site of Frizzell's Fish Shop. Back on the 23rd of October 1993, 2 bombers come down one Saturday, set a bomb on the counter. It prematurely exploded, killing one of the bombers and seriously injuring the other bomber. Also, 9 people lost their lives that day. And if you look to your left as you drive past, you'll see a plaque on the wall with the time that the bomb struck, 6 minutes past 1 on that Saturday afternoon. In retaliation, a week later on Halloween night, a loyalist group called the Ulster Freedom Fighters went in the apartment grey steel called the Rising Sun. They opened the door shouting trick or treat and opened up with automatic gunfire, killing innocent Catholics. So it was never one-sided, folks. Atrocities happened on both sides of the community. Just after the West Kirk Church, if you count the trees in the garden, there's 1 tree planted for each of those 9 lives. Also on the right, you'll see the 36th Ulster Division. That is for their achievements on the first day of the Butler Song, 1st of July, 1916. Coming up your left, you will see Queen Elizabeth II. On the right, King Charles III. To the right of King Charles, you will see Sir Edward Carson signing the Ulster Covenant against Home Rule from Dublin back in 1912. It was Lord Carson who formed the 36th Ulster Division, initially formed against Home Rule from Dublin. But whenever the First World War started, all the troops were sent to France. Also coming up to the right, you'll see a memorial garden to the Biardo Bar. This bar was bombed on the 13th of August 1975. 5 people lost their lives that day and over 50 were injured. And this was seen as a retaliation for a band from the Republic of Ireland called the Miami Show Band. They were a Catholic band who played up in the north. The Ulster Volunteer Force, masquerading as British troops, stopped them in a vehicle checkpoint, opened the back of the van and shot them all indiscriminately just because they were Catholics. On the right, some more atrocities. They were able to drive through the last of the 3 archways. This one was first erected last year for the 80th anniversary of VE Day, Victory in Europe. You can see it depicts all the wars from the Great War through to more recently Iraq and Afghanistan. Jail, on the right hand side, the courthouse. Both of these buildings were designed by Sir Charles Lanyon, and they're both linked by an underground tunnel, and that's where you get the terminology from the judge, take him down. The prisoner would have been taken from the courthouse on the right, underneath the road through the tunnel, up into the prison on the left to be processed. The courthouse has been purchased by a developer, and it is hoped to be a hotel. Also on the right we have another housing estate. This is known as the Lower Shangle. There was a one-time loyalist prominent figure called Johnny Mad Dog Adair. That was his stomping ground into the right, up until the year 2000, whenever his own people had every year in Belfast. So folks, if you look to your left, you'll see these tall blocks of flats. That's a council estate known as a New Lodge. And a singer from America was over here 16 years ago called Rihanna. And she decided to shoot one of her music videos in there using one of the council flats. Ironically enough, what was the name of the song? We Found Love in a Hopeless Place. On the left you'll see the Clifton Street Old Victorian Workhouse. It was in here where I got my first job when I was only 3 months old. I started by mopping the floors. Right, you will see another lovely red sandstone colour building just where the bus is sitting. That is the Belfast Central Library. There's a TV show in the UK called In the Line of Duty. This is the police station in the show. So Belfast has lots of great A-listed buildings, all from Victorian descent. This white one on the right on the corner is the old Bank of Ireland building, and that building has laid derelict for over 20 years. Coming up on your right, you'll see one of our main shopping centres. This one's called Castle Court. It now sits on the site of the old Avenue Cinema. It opened its doors back in 1990, and even before it opened its doors, it was blown up several times. Within the shopping centre, they've reopened a new cinema, and they've renamed it the Avenue Cinema. As we approach the next set of lights, if you look to your right, you'll see another lovely red sandstone building with a big designer clothing store inside it called Primark or Primark. That's where you can pick up 2 t-shirts for a £5. The building that is in is the old bank building. It was the first ever bank to open in Belfast back in the early 1400s. Another listed building, in 2017, it was gutted, it was burnt to the ground. Because they couldn't pull the structure down, they had to renovate. The building itself took 5 years to reconstruct. And if you think £2.50 is cheap for a t-shirt now, you were getting smoked on these ones for 40 pence. With what look like sails on them. If you look to the front of each and every one, you'll see all the famous ships built in Belfast over the years. The most 2 famous ships are right on the very end on the left. The one first from last is for the Olympic, and the one right on the very end on the left is for the most famous ship, the Titanic. And as I said at the start of the tour, folks, if you haven't been inside the City Hall yet, get yourself inside, have a look at the staircase. It is an exact replica of the staircase that was inside the Titanic. The only difference, the staircase inside City Hall is made out of marble. The one inside the Titanic is now sunken. I'm only joking, it's made out of oak, but they're exactly the same shape. So our City Hall was finished in 1906.
Shall be preached as a witness.
Coming up on your right, folks, you will see the Titanic Memorial Garden. This is dedicated to all the victims and also the guarantee team who went down trying to save the Titanic on that fateful evening. Then after that, you will see a monument for the Royal Irish Rifles. That is for their achievements in South Africa from 1899 up until 1902.